Hola, mis amores. In today's episode of Tea Time with Nori, I want to talk to you about intention. I've decided to address this topic because I remember when I began my journey into self mastery, really thinking about intention in this abstract way. If I felt that, I thought that in order to be intentional, it meant that you were somewhat spiritual and you kind of had to have this connection. And if you weren't embodying what I thought a spiritual was, I didn't think you could be intentional. But then when I began to look into the literal definition of intentional and what does it mean to live with intention, I realized that I was living with the most intentional person I know out of everybody. And that's my husband, JP. Now, the interesting thing about JP is that he's not a spiritual like person. He's not the type of person that's spending hours upon hours journaling and doing self reflection. That's not his thing. But when it comes to the way he lives his life, it's extremely intentional. So I was fascinated by this and I wanted to know, well, how can I be more intentional? How can I be more like him? And that's when I realized that I didn't know what that meant, which brings me to today's video. A lot of us don't really think about intention or living with intention in a practical way. Similar to how I was back then, we think about it in this abstract way. And it can be very difficult to know if it's working or not working when you don't have a practical day to day way of looking at things. And when it comes to being intentional, living with intentional, a lot of us don't have that. It's hard to know if it's working. It's hard to know how to know if it's working. It's hard to know if you're doing it right and how to improve it. And because of that, we often are not able to live with intention. So, if we want to go from living without living with intention to going to living with intention, we have to understand that to live with intention in its simplest form, it means to make decisions with a conscious awareness. And this conscious awareness helps you make choices that help you accomplish a specific goal. One of the reasons why I was struggling so much with being intentional in my own life was because I didn't have a defined, specific end goal in mind. I said I wanted to be intentional, and I was like, is that enough to say I want to be intentional? And I felt like just talking about being intentional meant that I was living intentionally. And that wasn't the case. What I found through my life and through the process of becoming more intentional is that you have to have an end goal, a desired destination that anchors your ability to be intentional. When you are in the present moment, you can take action, right? The past is the present that already happened, and the future is the present that's going to happen. The only place where you can take action is the now. So, to live intentionally or to live with intention is to make decisions in the now that help you accomplish and achieve a goal that you set for yourself. If you don't have that goal, you're going to struggle a lot. And this is why living with intention from a practical perspective really depends on what goals have you set for yourself and how clear you are on those goals so that the decisions that you make on a daily basis are aligned with your accomplishments of those goals. And that's what I learned from JP. There's nothing he does that doesn't have a purpose. That the books he reads, the shows he watches, the way he spends his time, there's always a reason why he's doing what he's doing, and it's always aligned with his goal, with the way he wants to live his life. So it's very important for us to have that, to have a clear definition on what our goal is, what do we want to accomplish, where do we want to go, so that we can make decisions with that goal in mind. So if you want to go from feeling like your life is all over the place and go to a place where you're living intentionally, you're living with purpose, and you feel that inside you, you have to get clear on what your goals are. And you have to outline what are those goals so that you can begin to employ a feedback loop with your behavior so you can feed those goals. And what I mean by a feedback loop is, I'll just give you an example. One of the goals that I have is to go to bed by 10:30 so I can get 7 hours of sleep and still wake up at 7 a.m. You see how specific that is? So I began to notice that I was having a hard time getting to bed by 10:30. And if I didn't get to bed by 10:30, I would stay longer in the bed in the morning, and I wouldn't get up by 7, which meant that my whole day was completely thrown off. So I began to pay close attention to why I wasn't getting to bed by 10:30 p.m. I started tracking and noticed that I would stay up watching YouTube, or I would be talking to my friends, or I just didn't want to go to bed. Do you ever just not want to go to bed? And that was causing a lot of conflict for me. So I began to reverse engineer, getting the feedback, right? So I would say, oh, well, today I didn't make it to bed by 10:30 because I was watching a video on YouTube. All right, well, tomorrow I'm going to cut that YouTube video down, and then let's see if that helps me. And that's what a feedback loop is. You take an action to help you accomplish a goal, and then when you don't reach your goal, you begin to look at what was the issue, like what came up for you, and then you make changes based on that information. You reiterate, and that's how the feedback loop works. And the more you do that, the better you get at practicing intentional living, because practicing intentional living is a muscle, it's a skill. You can definitely get better at it. All you have to do is practice it over and over again. So if you want to live with more intention, start with a goal in mind. What do you want to accomplish? What's your end goal? What's your desired destination? And break down what decisions can you make in the present moment, in the now, to help you achieve those goals. The more you do that, the more you live intentionally. And you don't have to be a spiritual person to do it. You don't have to be someone that's meditating 10 hours a day and journaling for 20 hours a day. If you do that, great. I love a meditation moment. I love a journal. But you don't have to do that. You can just focus on what's my goal? What are decisions I can make to achieve that goal? Let me make those decisions. That's what intentional living is. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like in a practical way. And you cannot practice that unless you have a goal in mind. So that's what I have for you today. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you in the next video. Hasta luego.